Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Gerald. Now we've been talking about application delivery as a whole. We have videos previously that have been discussing each step. We actually have one video discussing overall what is application delivery, and then we have discussed the writing portion, step one, in a previous video. I'll go ahead and link those in the description or somewhere. Now today we're going to be talking about testing. What is testing in the context of application delivery? How kind of was it done before? How have things changed? At a high level, and then we'll go ahead and jump into a little bit of the details. Let's go ahead and get started. Really, when we're talking about testing our software, let's keep in mind the intent. The original intent of testing our software was just to make sure that it does what we intend it to do, and that our users don't have a bunch of issues when they're trying to make it work. The initial form of testing is debugging. Right? We don't often think about debugging as a form of testing, but it's really the first line of defense against major problems that come up. We write code, if it doesn't work, we debug why it doesn't work, then we rewrite, etc. And then testing over time became more enhanced. So picture this, about 20-ish years, we're focused on debugging. Right? And then after that, we have this new thing pop up, this thing called QA, quality assurance. Now, there was a lot of good things that came with QA, right? We increased the quality of our software, and we had constructs around how we tested, and we had very specific stages, and there's good stuff, right? The quality increased because we had some more formal thoughts around how we test. Because we added all of this process onto testing beyond just normal debugging, it also increased the time it took to test. And because of how software was being developed, largely in these very large time chunks, anywhere between 3 to 6 months before we would even release something, if not longer, it could take years, right? We would often test near the end of that, and that would cause issues because we're testing and then we find out at the end that, hey, the software doesn't really do what we intended it to do. Now, as agile software development has become popular and we release software in shorter increments, think instead of 3-6+ months to 2 weeks, sometimes daily, etc. Now we incorporate testing into that cycle early and often. And this kind of blends into the DevOps space because now we have to automate a lot of things around testing that we didn't before. And we'll talk about some of the specific types of testing here in a minute. Just bear with me so we can establish some context. Now, when I'm saying ops and dev had to work together, what I'm really meaning is that we had to both make sure that the tests were written, meaning things like unit tests, integration tests, etc., that would test our code properly, but then we also had to make sure that there were appropriate test environments that were at the ready so that as we deploy software incrementally, we can then go and test it. And ideally, these test environments would be as close to an actual production environment. When I say production, I mean the environment that when you as a customer interact with an application, that business considers that environment you're interacting with production. It's real, it's live, it's happening. But there are also other environments that we manage that's behind the scenes, the user doesn't see, to make sure that the software is working appropriately. Maybe there would be a dev environment, short for development. Maybe there would be a test environment or a QA environment that really closely mimics production. And the dev environment would more serve for, hey, we just need to be able to iterate quickly, maybe experiment with certain things, etc. And your software gets promoted through each one of these environments all the way up to production, where then your user can actually interact with your software. Testing overall is extremely important. It really ensures that your software is of very high quality. Because if we develop software that has so many bugs that the user can barely use it, it can affect the reputation of the company you're working for or the people making the software itself. And the difference between catching 50% of the bugs and 80% of the bugs is massive. So let's be clear, we're not saying that testing means we eradicate all bugs. What we are saying is that the gains of testing is worth it because of the effects it has on user experience and overall quality of the software, and preventing as many bugs as we possibly can. Now let's go ahead and talk about some of the specific ways we test software. And first, let's talk about testing from the perspective of, hey, I'm writing the software. What are the tests that are closest to me writing the software as perhaps an engineer that I'll be doing on a daily basis? So in this realm of testing, what comes up in a large way is oftentimes unit testing and integration testing. Unit testing you can think of almost at a functional level, meaning a actual coding function level, because there is a functional testing thing. We'll talk about that later. But unit testing works at that kind of function level or method level, where I'm saying, hey, I'm writing this method. It needs to do a specific thing. I need to write code that makes sure it does a specific thing. And then we have integration testing, which you can kind of holistically think of it as, how do all of my different methods work together to actually achieve a specific outcome within my code? So integration tests how things work together as a principle. That thing could be your code locally. You may even have some more advanced integration tests that test some mocks of external services, etc., etc. And then as you kind of inch over to, okay, we're not just writing our code, but we're also starting to package and get ready to deploy our code. At that point, you may actually start doing, in these previous environments, dev and test, etc., you may do some stress testing to see how much strain your app can actually take with the amount of requests, etc., things like that. And then you might, as you scooch over, go into fully fledged functional testing. Now, functional is a word that's kind of overused sometimes. In the context of functional testing, what we're really talking about is emulating a business scenario. So I have a user that needs to do something specific. And can that user do that specific thing? Is our software actually functional like a bike is functional when I'm riding it? And then as we move further, we have things like regression testing, which actually tests, hey, as I release a new feature to my users in production, does this break previous versions of our software? Is it actually being impacted in a negative way? We need to be able to test if that is happening or not. Now, I definitely didn't mention every form of testing. The goal of this video was to more so give you a high level understanding of how testing fits into application delivery and how it doesn't just fit in right after we write our code, but there's different testing that happens at every stage in application delivery. And really all of us should have a testing mindset because we want to know if our software actually does what it's supposed to do. Now, I really hope that you enjoyed the video and you learned something. If you did, please drop a like and a comment. I'd love to hear you all's thoughts on the subject. We're all just building here and learning together. In our next video, we're going to be talking about different ways of packaging our code. That's the next step in application delivery, and it's a pretty interesting subject as things have evolved over time. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you for watching. Gerald out.